Hi, I'm Roberta. Welcome to my kitchen. Today we're going on a vicarious holiday to Korea with one of the most classic Korean dishes. Certainly the dish that I think most people have heard of, whether they've been to Korea or not, and that is bibimbap. Now, bap is Korean for rice, and bibim means to mix. And bibimbap is literally that, mixed rice. I guess in some ways it's the Korean version of fried rice, although the rice is steamed and then all the other ingredients are arranged on top and you mix it at the table before you eat it. Now, there's at least two types of bibimbap, probably a lot more, but two main types. Dolsot bibimbap, which is made in a dolsot, a classic Korean stone bowl, or, because these can be quite hard to come by and they're very heavy, you can make it in a clay pot, you could make it in a casserole dish, you can make it in anything that's flame proof and oven proof. The other type of bibimbap, which is just as popular, is not crisped up in a pot or a bowl, it's just a bowl of rice with the garnishes on top. But today, so long as you've got something flame proof to cook it in, we're going to make the dolsot bibimbap. And if you don't have anything flame proof, then you can certainly just make the regular bibimbap and it'll still taste just as delicious. Let's get started. So the most important part of our bibimbap is our bap, our short-grained rice or sushi rice. And we want to give that a good wash in plenty of cold water. Several changes of cold water in fact, but just to make it easy, I'll give it a rinse in this bowl and then I'll drain it, and then we're just going to steam it. I cook mine in a rice cooker. It's really up to you. If you like to use the absorption method on the stovetop, that's fine too. But look, you can see, I hope, how much starch is in that water, and that's what we want to wash out by giving it a good wash with several changes of water. So while our rice is steaming, we need to prepare the rest of the ingredients that go on top. But first of all, we need to pop our clay pots or dolsot in the oven to get nice and warm. If you're using clay pots, it's important that you soak them really well first. So I've had this one in a sink of water for about an hour. So now I'm going to pop both of these in the oven and we'll prepare the rest of the ingredients that go on top of our rice. So what goes on top of our rice? It can be pretty much anything you have. I have a feeling that this might be a dish that came about with mums cleaning out the fridge, the leftover rice and the leftover vegetables, because Korean food is often about lots of little vegetable side dishes, and this is a great way to use them up. But we're going to start from scratch, and what we're going to use is some spinach, some nori, some carrot, some bean sprouts, and you do just want to take the time to snap the tails off those bean sprouts. And we're going to cover them with boiling water and just let them sit aside while we prepare everything else, just to blanch them. And very importantly, and a bibimbap could be vegetarian, it could be seafood, it could have chicken on it. We're going to use a beautiful piece of wagyu, and we're just going to slice that as finely as possible. And then all of these ingredients are going to be prepared with some sesame oil and some garlic. And when our rice is ready, we're going to layer it all into the pot. Now when I'm working with nori, I always like to just refresh it over an open flame. It's not essential, it is already toasted. So if you don't have a gas cooktop, don't worry about this step, but I think it brings it back to life, like toasting spices. Now whether we've toasted the nori or not, we're just going to fold it in half, maybe in a quarter, and we're just going to snip it into thin strips. As I said, you can leave out any of these ingredients, you can replace them with whatever you like. If you do happen to eat Korean food often, you've got some lovely little side dishes left, this is the perfect way to use them up, and the perfect way to use up some steamed rice. I do love the umami hit that the seaweed gives this though. The next thing we need to prepare is our carrot, and we're going to cut it into thin matchsticks. I like to use a mandolin for this, but please, 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 if you're using a mandolin, always use the guard. And we'll just get some thin slices, and then we can stack them on top of each other and slice them into matchsticks. This is definitely the best way to do it, but every chef I know has cut themselves on a mandolin. So please, 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 always use the guard. There we are, nice thin slices that we can stack up and chop. Just take that end bit off, and we want them into fairly short matchsticks, so I think we're going to cut them in half and then just a nice fine slice. So one more ingredient to go on top of our rice, some green onions. We just want to get rid of the ends, get rid of any of the older green bits. We'll keep some of the green, especially that lovely pale green. Look, if it's about that thick, I think it's worth slicing it in half before we slice it. But if they're thinner, I don't bother. If they're really thick, you might even slice them into quarters. And we're just going to slice these on the diagonal, and they're going to be part of the garnish that goes onto our rice. So just a little bit more to do, and then we can assemble our bibimbap. Our bean sprouts are ready, we just need to drain those. Our nori's chopped and our green onions chopped. They're ready to go. Now we've got a couple of other items that need to be cooked with the classic seasoning of sesame oil and garlic. We're just going to wilt down some spinach leaves, sweat off our carrots, fry our beef, and then we're going to fry a couple of eggs, and then that's all going to go on top of our rice to the stove. So now we're just going to wilt down our spinach, our carrot, cook our beef and fry our eggs, all with a little sesame oil and garlic. So about a teaspoon of sesame oil, about a quarter of our garlic, and in with our spinach. We can hear the sizzle, and that smell of sesame oil. For me, that's what this dish is all about. I love that. Not too hot. We're not frying it. We're just wilting it. Give it a bit of a stir. I always find it's easier just to pop the lid on for a minute and it'll wilt itself down. So there's our spinach. It's wilted enough. We can get that out of the pan now, and we'll fry our carrot. So another teaspoon or so of sesame oil. Another quarter of our garlic clove. The flavouring in this is quite subtle, but by using the same pan over and over again, we're also building up some layering of flavour, which I like. So we'll give that a stir around. They're nice and fine, so they're not going to take too long. We'll just cover them and let them sweat down for a minute or two. So there's our carrot. It's just been sweating down for a few minutes. We want it still crunchy, but we don't want it raw. So that's ready to go. Okay, so carrot and spinach done. You can see we're building up some nice flavour in that pan. Another teaspoon or so of sesame oil. The rest of our garlic. Let's crank that heat up and just give that a stir around. And in with our beef. And let's just toss that around for literally 30 seconds to a minute, depending on the heat on your stove. We just want to sear it. And it also depends how raw you like your meat, of course. But this is beautiful Wagyu. You could certainly eat it raw, but it's going to have a lovely flavour with that light searing on the outside. As soon as you can see that every bit of it is coloured, that's it. It's out of the pan. I actually don't mind even if there's still a little bit of red. Yum, yum. Okay, that's as much as I want out of there now. So our beef's done. Another couple of teaspoons of sesame oil because we want these eggs to fry. In with our eggs. And we pop the lid on and turn the heat off because I don't want to overcook them. So now the assembly. We do just want a little soy sauce on our beef. So we have our dolsot, or at least our clay pot, out of the oven, and we want to work quite quickly now while it is hot. So we put a good tablespoon or so of sesame oil in there and brush it all around, and then we're going to pack our rice in there, as I said, while it's still nice and hot. So doing one at a time, half the rice in here because the other half's going into the other clay pot in a moment. So we're just packing that rice down into the nice hot pot because that's how we're going to crisp up the base. Then, when it's packed down as firmly as we can, our egg slides on top, hopefully without breaking the yolk, but if you break it, you break it. There we go. We want him about in the centre. And now we simply arrange everything around it. Half the spinach, a little bit more, it's up to you what order you want to put it in. I like a bit of a mixture of colours, so now we'll go white, then we'll get some orange in there. Let's go for a bit of green again with our nori. He's going to be a bit flaky, but we'll get him in there. We want to try and leave that egg yolk visible. And then we just pop this on the stove top for about 5 minutes so the base of that rice can get nice and crispy. Let's go. Here we are. Don't know if you can hear that, but it's crackling away quite nicely. The egg yolk's still not quite set, which is just what I want, because when I toss it through, I want the yolk to coat everything. We have some of our beautiful kimchi. Now, ideally, you've made this a few days earlier, but it really is just as delicious as soon as it's made. And the final piece that needs to be tossed through, some of that gorgeous Korean chili paste called gochujang. Not super spicy, got a bit of a chili kick to it, so the idea is at the table everyone adds as much or as little gochujang, as much or as little kimchi, toss it all together, that mixing, that's the bibim, and enjoy your bibimbap.